Good evening, craftsmen, and welcome back to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast. I'm your co-host, Brother Gabriel. We want to take a moment and thank you all so much for the outpouring of support we're getting on social media and on all of our streaming services. We do this because we have a mission for preserving Masonic history and Masonic stories. We like to think that we do this for the passion of it, but we really couldn't do this without you, craftsmen. We appreciate your listens, your likes, and your comments, and we hope to keep releasing great content for you so that we can all enjoy preserving Masonic history and stories together. But there's one craftsman who's part of this team who goes a little bit unnoticed, still credited always, because he's a fundamental part of our setup here. But he likes to be part of the background. He likes to be part of the stage crew of the production, but we think he deserves a little bit of time sitting in the front row with the spotlight. So, craftsmen, I would like to introduce our amazing technical guru, Brother Turco, Brother Ryan Turco.
Thank you, Brother Gabriel. It's kind of weird being on this side of the mic and being on this side of the equipment, to be honest. A little bit nervous, probably going to be making some weird-ass faces at you. Sorry for the cursing. There is no filter on me, so Sam's going to, or Brother Wilburn's going to be having some fun beeping out a lot of this podcast. Or we may just put a special warning on those that are sensitive to cursing and just say, hey, there's a little bit extra flavor.
A little bit of extra flavor. Brother Turco, this is why we keep you behind the laptop.
This is where I should be.
Well, we've all come to enjoy you in Lodge as part of a little more gruffer of a Mason. You're really good at what you do. You're really good at organization, and you're really good at your Lodge skills. But you're also a little gruff around the edges.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a little bit why me and Brother Wilburn kind of get together or get along so good, is because, like he said in the introduction, he's more of a renegade, and me and him kind of bond over that kind of stuff. And looking at history and the rules and going, how can we bend these just enough to get what we need, just to improve not just Masonry or our homes or whatever, but life, friends, businesses, all that kind of stuff. Kind of keep making things work as if nothing's changed, but kind of improve it just a little bit. If that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. Well, I genuinely like having you as a friend, as a brother, and as a member of the podcast.
Well, thank you.
It always makes things a little bit interesting.
Sometimes I agree with you. Sometimes no. Me and you get along too. And I know you've been super busy lately because you have just, as you said in your introduction, just became a father and stuff. So your interests have been a little bit, or not interest, but
my attention has been towards my son.
Yes, which rightfully so. It should definitely be towards family before anything else. So, but as we are brothers, we're always there for each other.
So you didn't spend a lot of time in Demolay like the rest of us in the friend group did, though. You kind of came into our friendship circle a little bit after some of the Demolay days, but you still knew of Demolay. You still knew us.
So I didn't know of Demolay until I actually came to Genoa Lodge and met you all and started becoming friends with you all and hanging out with the guys, as we refer to our little family. Growing up, never heard of Demolay, never saw the signs or anything. Looking back now and hearing all the great stories you guys had, wish I would have joined. Wish I would knew about it. I don't know if it would be in the same chapter as you guys were, because I live out in Perrysburg, where you guys were obviously here in Genoa, but I feel like our paths would have crossed a little bit, and I probably would have looked at you all and go, wow, they're a bunch of weirdos. I don't want to have anything to do with them, and walk the opposite way. So,
and yet here we are today.
Yeah. So maybe for the better, it went this way.
Well, that's a great way to look at it. So we'll get into how you came to Genoa Lodge in a little bit, because it's all part of your Masonic story, but you were a Mason for a little bit before you came here to our lodge, right?
Yes, I want to say about 3 years or maybe about 4. I actually started in Maumee My start lodge was Northern Light number 40. That one was just a little bit closer to home. Started there. Things were going good, and that's actually where I met Brother Wilburn. After a meeting one day, me and him were just kind of chit-chatting because we're about the same age and we're younger folks and stuff, and started talking, and then I don't even remember how the conversation started, but we just started talking about Dungeons and Dragons and how he's running a campaign with all these weirdos back in Genoa, and I'm looking into it and going to be starting one. And me and him probably sat for about an hour afterwards talking about it. And then afterwards, he was like, you know what are you doing this Sunday? You should come out and come to this random guy's house that I've never heard of, never met, never even seen, and come play with us. And I was like, I don't know what in my right mind went, yeah, that'll be fun. And that Sunday, packed up my stuff. I remember my mom going, where are you going? I was like, oh, I'm going to some friend's house. Oh, from high school? No, not really. Well, where do they live? Genoa? Who do you know in Genoa? I don't know, I just met them a few days ago. You're going to be safe? Yeah, I should be. If not, call the cops. And then I was out till about, 2, 3 a.m. playing Dungeons and Dragons, just laughing, having a great old time, and then just kept doing that every Sunday. Just going back.
That's incredible, and I love hearing your guys' D&D stories. I'm not part of your guys' D&D campaigns, but I love hearing the stories of it. It's so interesting that Masons bring people into their D&D campaigns a lot of the same way that they bring other people into their lodges. It's like, hey, come on out, have some dinner with us, hang out and everything, and then all of a sudden you're a part of our lodge.
Yep, and that's just the fun thing about Masonic lodges, Masonry, and all that is like it's very like-minded people, and it's not like, oh, hey, I want to go meet friends. You just do it because you're like, you know what, I'm interested. Let me see. And then life has a fun way of working itself out, and then before you know, you're best friends with the officer sitting next to you or the guy in the east, and you're just after lodge chit-chatting, going to biker clubs that not in a million years I thought, like seeing movies and stuff and be like seeing all the terrible ends of bikers and stuff. I would be like, yeah, I'm going to go out to the biker club with Sam and have a few drinks. And you know what? They're having a New Year's Eve thing. Yeah, I'm going to go spend my New Year's Eve there. Like just never in a million years. And then it all dates back to that very first step that I took into Northern Light.
Mm-hmm. It's really incredible how Masonic journeys go about that way. So, and you said your original home lodge was Northern Light number 40, right?
Correct.
So I don't know a lot of the brothers over at that lodge. Can you tell me a little bit about what their culture is like? Like what drew you to that lodge? Was it the location or?
So it's kind of funny because where I lived in Perrysburg, there were 3 lodges all around me. There was Sylvania Pyramid Lodge, Northern Light, and then I believe Phoenix Lodge. And me being, I don't remember. That was about 5 years ago, so about early 20s, I would say, is how old I was. And I just thought, you know what? Google knows everything. I'll Google all these lodges and pick my thought there. And one of the lodges had one review, and it was a terrible review, and it was saying like, oh, they're not good to newcomers. If you don't know anyone, you're not going to have fun. And then the other lodge had no reviews at all. And then Northern Light had, I think, like 5 or 6 of them. And they're old, but they were like, oh, they're great guys. You'll love them. Blah. And that's where I was just like, you know what? That's where I'm going to go. I'm going to just go during when they say they're open, because at that time I didn't know when lodges were open / meetings and stuff. So I just looked on their website and it said, hey, Tuesday from this time to this time. So I figured, you know what? I'll get there bright and early. They say they open at 5. I'm going to get there at 4:30. And got there. Remember, there was like 2 guys there. Forget what their names were. I walked in, really nice dressed, and they stopped their conversation, looked at me, and they're like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Yeah, my name is blah, 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 blah." And I gave them my backstory and everything. And I said, "I would like to pursue Masonry. Can you guys help me?" And they said, "Well, of course, that's what we're here to do. Here's a petition." And just talk to me. And then before I knew it, they were calling me saying, "Hey, you've been voted in. We would like to have you start your entered apprentice this day. Are you available?" And then, yeah, I just went from there.
Well, it's really great to hear that the brothers were happy immediately to start helping you with that. I mean, that strikes me as a great example of how this fraternity works, of a well-mannered, well-dressed, small amount of education in the fraternity, but a little bit,
Yep.
comes in and says, "I would like to know more."
Yeah.
And the brothers go, "Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's help you along with
And
that."
I remember that night, so like I said, they started at 5. I'm just going to say, I don't remember the exact time, and I got there early and stuff. They only kept me for about 15, 30 minutes or something, just kind of talking to me like what we're doing now. And after I filled in the paper, they were like, "Well, we'll talk about this tonight during our meeting. Unfortunately, you can't be involved because, but we don't have refreshments tonight. But if you'd like a pop or water or something, by all means, and then you're free to go. Like, you can go home, you can stick around, talk to more brothers, or travel around the shops that are nearby and stuff." So I think I just grabbed a water because I was still a little nervous and went home. And I remember my mom was like, "I wasn't expecting you home this early. Like, I thought you'd be there for a long time." And I was like, "Well, I'm not fully in yet." And I kind of explained it to her. And she was like, okay, well, I'm sure your grandpa would be proud that you're taking that very first step. So, and that's kind of going back a little bit. But that's kind of why I joined. So my grandpa unfortunately left us. I know my mom's going to kick my butt if I don't get this year right. I want to say 2018, 2017-ish. So right before I joined, he was a Mason in Indiana, Gas City Lodge number, I don't remember the number, but never really knew that growing up with him until after he passed, unfortunately. And then we started going through all his stuff, found his rings, found his books and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to look into this. Kind of kept pushing it off. And then I was like, you know what? Enough pushing it off. Today's the day. And that's where I kind of looked into it. And the very first step, I'll admit, was for him. It was in memory of him. I was still young. I didn't want to come out of my shell. I didn't really want to fully go make a fool out of myself and whatnot. But I was like, you know what? He'd be proud of me. Second step, 50-50. Third step, all me. Because I knew at this point, he's smiling down. He's ecstatic that I'm now not just his grandson, but his brother too.
That's incredible. That's a really poignant, really powerful way to feel about that. And it's why we enjoy doing this. And hopefully someday maybe you'll think about collecting everything you know and all your thoughts about him and maybe doing a little memorial for him on the podcast if you ever want to.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a great little addition for you and for your family and for the podcast. So you said you started your journey in 2018, end of 2017, early 2018.
Yeah, that sounds about right. A little fuzzy on the years. Let me look it up on Grandview real fast. Yeah, my initiation into Entered Apprentice was November 23rd, 2018 at Northern Lake number 40. So yeah.
Quick shout out to the craftsmen who don't know. You can register with Grandview and get all of your information very easily at the touch of your fingers on your smart device, on your laptop, whatever you need.
Yep, it's a great tool. I'm 29, but I will say it's a little finicky in some spots. I know I've talked to a few other brothers, and they're like, "Oh, it's the best thing ever. You just really need to learn it." So don't be afraid to try a new thing. Worst case scenario is you go, "Yeah, I'm not going to do this," and you uninstall it.
Well, it'll work out pretty good. So did you get all 3 of your degrees at your original home lodge?
Yes. Obviously, like I said, I got my Entered Apprentice, gave that exam back, like, I think within a month. passed to the degree of Fellowcraft, and then raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason, actually during their yearly inspection. And it wasn't with their standard Bible. It was with my grandpa's Bible that he was raised on.
Good.
And stuff. So,
Good.
because at the time their worshipful master was one of my close friends, still is, but haven't really talked to him in a few years because he's moved out to California and kind of went into the Silicon Valley kind of stuff. But he was like, hey, there would be no better honors than to do this. Are you okay with this? And I said, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm 100% down for this.
That's real nice. Which degree do you think you liked most? Because I really liked my Master Mason degree. I think a lot of Masons would say that their Master Mason degree is pretty near and dear to their hearts. But for instance, Brother Tanner Faust, he really likes the Fellowcraft degree.
Yeah.
Also because he was a stand-in candidate for the Fellowcraft degree almost a dozen times over for us and for his home lodge in Finley. But do you have some fond memories of your degrees, one that you liked more than the others?
So I would have to say 50% of it is Master Mason, wholeheartedly. It's just one that you're going to walk away from and you're going to go, I'm going to remember this till I'm on my deathbed, till I'm gone. I'm going to remember this. 25% of the Fellowcraft, just because it's just beautiful. Everything that you're taught, you're shown, everything, you're just like, wow, I never thought about this. Enter Apprentice, the other 25%. It's a good degree. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to badmouth it or anything because there's nothing wrong with it. But it was awkward because you've never experienced something like this. And you're in a room with strangers. So I think I kind of agree with the other Masons, and a lot of the Masons is, or brothers, I should say, not Masons, because I am still a brother. But the Master Mason is definitely my favorite one. I would have to say first place goes to the Master Mason because I know, and for those that aren't brothers, the Master Mason is a degree that you're going to walk away from and you're going to go, holy cow, that was amazing. I'm going to remember this till the day I die. It's just phenomenal. Second place, I would have to say Fellowcraft, just because me being an engineer by trade, I am taught to look at things differently, taught to investigate things, to see how structure is, how this was made. And the Fellowcraft, it kind of goes, hey, you know that world that you're like learning as an engineer? Yeah, well, we're going to show you all these hidden things that are right there in plain sight that you never even thought of. And it's just, you start seeing the beauty, everything. And that's where Fellowcraft, it just kind of hits home for that. Third would definitely be Entered Apprentice, not because it's terrible or it's just weird or whatnot, because it's still a great degree. But me taking the very first step, knowing nobody, being in a building pretty much with no friends around, it was just kind of that weird, like, is this the right thing? Am I doing something wrong, or am I making a fool out of myself or whatnot? But that thought kept going through my head. This is for your grandpa. This is for grandpa. This is for grandpa. This is what he did. He would be so proud. He would be cheering you on right now. And I figured, you know what? I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to go ahead and take that very first step. And you know what? Afterwards, I'm like, damn, that was good. That showed me things that no school will ever show me, that no school will ever teach me.
Well, I really like that because there's also some ways to interpret the Entered Apprentice degree that kind of go along with exactly what you were feeling and describing, which I think might be kind of the point. But again, this gets into the kind of philosophical, esoteric place that where older Masons like to sit out in the comfy chairs in the lodge and talk about the history of the esoteric nature of the degrees, and where us young guys are are just happy to get through our degrees and try to study our parts and try to learn everything, and then also juggle our new kids and our budding careers and everything else. So we can leave the nitty-gritty esoteric discussions for some of the more seasoned members of the fraternity.
Yep, and it's always great for after your degree, whether it be Enterprise, Fellowcraft, Master Mason is, after you get those degrees, it's always funny because you go out to the dining room, the club room, wherever, and there's always a few brothers that come up to you and just say, hey, congratulations for taking this step. By the way, during the lecture, did you notice this part? And you may be studying every single word when they're telling it, but then they're going to tell you something that, hey, yeah, it's this way, but what if it kind of explained a little bit of this too? And you go, you know what, that's right. There's more than one way this could mean. And then they start talking like what you were saying and all that, and you're like, wow, Masonry is not just this one little thing. It's a whole lot more. And for me, I'm so glad I signed up for this. I'm so glad I took that first step and just kept walking.
That's why having a good mentor post-degree is really important, someone who can really help keep you engaged, but also keep you thinking at the same time.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Turco, for talking with us about some very interesting topics.
Yeah.
Craftsmen, we're going to go to a short intermission, and we'll invite you to keep listening for our host, Brother Samuel, to continue with the rest of this wonderful interview.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast. I'm your host, Brother Samuel, and returning, we have our good friend and brother, Brother Turco, who, as most of you probably know by now, is usually behind the computer and doing our quality work. But it's amazing and awesome that we can finally get him in front of the microphone and we can kind of hear his perspective on things.
Yeah, which I would just like to touch on that a little bit for the listeners that don't know. So us three have always talked about, oh, hey, Ryan, we really need to get you behind the mic and stuff. And we kind of talked this morning about it, and they're like, yeah, well, we can't find anything else. We may just do your interview. So, oh, okay, that's fine. That's whatever. Not telling me anything else. And then I get here, start helping set up, and I'm like, hey, let's do some sound checks. And Sam, you sit there. Gabe, you sit there. And we get all done, and Sam goes, wait, why are we doing me here? Because this is your seat. I go, no, that's where you sit. And he goes, oh, yeah, no, we're doing your interview tonight. And I go, I'm sorry, what? And he goes, yeah, I figured this way it would be easier and you wouldn't be freaking out all day. I'm like, oh, thanks, but I'll be freaking out for the next 10 minutes while we continue setting up. Thank you, Sam.
Well, you know me, I like to throw a curveball your way.
I don't know why we're still friends.
I don't know either.
I mean, that's only 10% of the time. The other 90% is just gravy.
Yeah. Here you are in my top 10 favorite people. So, going back to the questions, just so we can get back on topic. You and I have both been Masons for quite some time, and we both were members of Northern Light, as you've already spoken of. And this question is always very interesting to me because I feel like every time I ask it, I get a different response than what I was expecting. What do you absolutely love about this fraternity? What keeps bringing you back week after week?
You know, I kind of ask myself that after every meeting, after every get-together, not in a bad way, not in a, why am I still a part of this? I hate this or anything, but more of a, I'm so glad I joined. Like, this is just so much fun. And I tell my fiance, I tell my mom, my dad, anyone that ever like asks me, hey, you're a Freemason, aren't you? Why do you care about it? And it's just the brotherhood, the love, the friendship, the stories you get to tell. I mean, you and I, like I said earlier in the podcast, like we met just on a whim, pretty much. We were just young and we're like, hey, he's about my age. Let me go talk to him. And we just kind of talked. And then next thing I know, I'm going over to Jack's house, Brother Race, and meeting, God, I don't even know how many guys were there in that D&D group, like 6 others. And I'm like, oh, crap, I only know Sam, and I've only met him for an hour. What am I doing? So,
And then week after week, you came and sat at the table and dealt with my shenanigans.
yeah. And then me and you left Northern Light, and we came to Genoa, and I got to meet the brothers. I mean, obviously, I was hanging out with them outside of Lodge and stuff and having parties, getting a little bit too drunk at parties. I mean, we were young and dumb. But once we got into Lodge, I noticed, like, this is just like another hangout session. This is just like, yes, there's business. Yes, there's planning and getting events in place, fundraisers and whatnot. But it's hanging out with, I mean, we say brothers because we are Masonic brothers, but it's hanging out with your brothers. It's hanging out with your guys and just being like, you know what, this is a great time. We can chuckle and have a few laughs. I mean,
Bully each other.
yeah, like what we were just doing off mic and stuff, or when we were getting ready to start the second half and you walked into the lodge room with a monster and it started exploding and you just went, oh no, and walked out, and me and Gabe were just sitting there like, what the heck is going on? We go into the other room and you're just sitting there cleaning up the table that you put it on because it went everywhere.
It's the story of my life lately. And if Brother Murphy and Brother Allred are listening to this podcast, and I certainly hope that they are, don't worry, I cleaned it up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we use the carpet cleaner. We scrub the floor. It's okay. You won't tell. And if you do tell, well, this isn't coming out for a few months. And you can't tell me you've seen it by now.
I hope not. We'll have to find out.
Yeah.
So, interesting, you talk about us leaving Northern Light. And I think we both changed lodges for different reasons. I left, I got my job. It was closer to this side of town. All of my childhood friends belonged to this lodge. I was ready for a change. So I kind of hopped over here. Yours is interesting, though. You came over here not only to spend time with us because you had grown so close to our little group, but you ended up falling in love with one of our best friend's little sisters.
Yeah, so I remember I left Northern Light shortly after you left. I was in that time in my life where it was just like, you know what? Let me reevaluate my interests. Let me reevaluate where I'm spending my time. You know, I'm not done with college. I really want to focus on college and my work and stuff. So left Northern Light and then just got into that group where I was like, you know what? I did those 3 steps. I'm happy of the time I spent. Now I got all you guys. And I remember you all at any party and you guys would start talking about Masonic events and stuff. You guys would always make that joke of, oh, hey, you should come back over to Genoa. It's better. It's we have a lot of fun. And I'm like, yeah. And then one day we were over at the Cashin's pool party in the summer, and I mean, this was obviously after I met my now fiance Bree, and I remember we were in the pool, me, you, Bree, her mom, her dad, Dustin, and a few other brothers, and Dustin was getting ready to be the Worshipful Master next year, and he comes over and he goes, so what's the chances I can talk you into not just coming over to Genoa, but jumping in line? And at that time I was like, still no. And then me and Bree's dad, or Dustin's dad, we were just shooting the shit and we were joking, and he actually became a really good friend of mine and stuff. And he goes, you know what, I'll go back to Lodge and I'll be an officer if you're gonna be an officer. And I was like, now I gotta join. Now I gotta go back.
Dad's telling me I have to.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm dating his daughter, and eventually I'm hoping to ask for his permission for hand in marriage. I should really probably think about this. Thought about it for the next few days, and then I think I texted Dustin and was like, you got yourself a deal. As long as you can help me transition from Northern Light to Genoa and make sure I'm not all by myself and stuff, you got a deal.
Well, it's cool because the Cashin family is pretty well known in these parts. Most of them have worked for the local fire department since it was founded, more or less. And on top of that, they have a very strong Masonic history here at Genoa Lodge. Your fiance's grandfather was a past master, and her brother's a past master.
Yep.
Rob, her dad, is not a past master, but once again, very active member. As much as he can. He's got a busy work schedule, but the lodge here, at least in Genoa, in part, the Cashin family has kind of held up this lodge in one way, shape, or another at some point in time. So it's very fitting that you, who will be joining into this family, should be a part of that as well.
Yep. And I remember, for those that don't know, Bree, my fiance, was in a really bad car accident a few months ago and stuff, and we're kind of going through a few court cases and kind of stuff with that. Don't want to get into too much of a detail, but we're actually meeting with the prosecuting attorney, and he walked into the room and he goes, so is Ron Cashin your dad, your grandpa? And we all looked at him like, how do you know grandpa? And her mom was there, and she goes, that's her grandpa. How do you? Oh, we used to hang out. Are they still in Genoa? Is he still a firefighter in Lodge and stuff? And it was just like someone that we had to go into a different county to go talk to, and he just knew us. And then I can't tell you how many times I went into Ray's or Miller's or something with the Cashin, and someone stops us and just like, oh, hey, how's grandma doing? How's grandpa doing? How's so-and-so? And all that stuff. And it's just, it's a little eye-opening about like what you just said is like the Cashins are very well known here just because they've been around. They've been in so much stuff. And then you're right, Genoa Lodge is equally known. You go to other districts and they're like, oh yeah, I know Genoa Lodge. I know brother so-and-so. Is he still there? Is he still doing good? You guys still at list the address and everything? And it's just,
you're like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's just, you never realize how small the world is until you start traveling around.
No kidding. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
You can go up and down the street. You can walk down the street and throw a stone rock and find somebody that's a member of this lodge that you never would have imagined. One of the kids I went to high school with, Trevor McLargan, never realized it until I came to Lodge and, got a chance to look at our roster that his dad's a Mason.
Yep.
And then I work with his wife at the hospital, and she always asks me, oh, are you guys doing anything? I'm trying to get him to come back up there. It's just crazy how small things really are when you put it into perspective.
And it's also incredible, not just for, oh, hey, I've completed the first 3 steps, it opens up. That first step, that second step, you start realizing everything. I know my best friend, her dad is Mason, and I knew her probably 3-4 years. Went over to her house, hung out with her mom and dad, had dinner, went out, all that kind of stuff. Never thought, oh, he's a Mason, he'll know and stuff. And then one day he saw my ring, and he goes, why are you wearing that? And I go, well, because I'm a Mason. And he goes, really? Where? And I told him Northern Light, and he goes, yeah, second, let's go into the kitchen. And I was like, that's kind of weird, but sure. And went in there, and he kind of tested me, and all of a sudden he says the words, does everything, and I'm just like, holy shit, you're a Mason. And he goes, yeah, I haven't been to Lodge in 15 years, but I'm still a Mason and stuff. And I'm just like, I've known you for 4 years of my life. Never would have thought. And
never imagined it.
I think at the time I was still, I either just became a Master Mason or I was still a fellow craft. And I was just like, holy cow. And people start popping out of the woodwork, and you go to the store with the regalia on, or you're driving around and see it, and it's like, holy cow. When they say in plain sight, they aren't joking. It's not like, oh, we're not allowed to discuss where we meet and stuff, or you're not allowed to discuss that you're a member. It's like, no, you want to learn? Come knock on the door.
It's strange how things have changed. Brother Taylor talks about in his interview that at a time things were very hush-hush back in like the 50s or the 60s.
Yeah.
And now when you look at how things are now, to be one, ask one. Well, we got car ornaments. We're able to actually tell people, hey, I think you'd be a good Mason.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just crazy to think, if you would have told me 2 years ago that we would be doing a Masonic podcast and talking about the fraternity, I would have told you that you were crazy.
I mean, just think about all of the times that we're at Northern Light, like suggesting to some of the brothers, like, oh, we should do this, we should plan this. And they kind of looked at us like, what chaos are you trying to unleash?
You
and
gremlins.
I remember one day we tried like setting up like a Dungeons and Dragons with the brothers. And note, a lot of the brothers were older than us.
Mm-hmm.
There was really no one younger than us, but we're talking a few 30s, 40s, and then a lot of 70, 80-year-olds. And they were looking at us like, you want us to play what? What dungeon? And where's the dragon?
It's in the basement of Northern Light 40. That's where the dungeon is.
Yeah. Oh God, I'll never forget that place. But yeah, like if someone would have came up to us when we were talking Dungeons and Dragons the first time, and be like, hey, in a few years you guys are gonna be, I would have been like, what are you on, and where did you get it?
Can you get me some?
Yeah.
But it just kind of goes back to that whole brotherhood aspect. I mean, it's crazy how things go full circle. You and I sat down, talked about Dungeons and Dragons for an hour.
Yeah.
Then you come over and you go and you meet all of my friends. And then you're coming out, hanging out with us all the time. And then you're going to parties that even I'm not going to and hanging out with these guys. So much so that I gave you a spare key to my apartment so you had somewhere to sleep.
Yep.
Someone could drop you off just to be safe, because, would never want to ruin our careers. And then, the next thing you know, you're dating a girl that I literally have known since she was learning how to write spelling words while I'm taking Taekwondo in Master Taylor's class.
Yep.
I mean,
just that. So, kind of a little bit, and you can cut me off here, obviously, because I know we got a few more questions, but I love talking about how Bree and I first met. It was for her 21st birthday at Brother Cashin Dustin's apartment, which was right next to your apartment, and all that separated was a little tiny hallway. And I remember you texted me and was like, hey, why don't you come out tonight? And I was like, I got tests next week. I should really, you know what? Nah, I just want to stay home and play video games and study and stuff. And you're like, no, come on now. We'll have a drink at least. I was like, I'll do fine. And I put on pants. I put on a red shirt. I remember the red for a specific reason in a moment. Came all the way out and was like, okay, and started having a good time. And then Ricky came over to me and he's like, hey, can I talk to you a little bit away from the party? And I was like, sure. Again, one of those moments that's like, what the fuck is going on?
Right.
A little bit intoxicated at that point. I think I was like at beer 8 or 9. And he goes, hey, I need you to focus. And I was like, okay, what? And he goes, you know the birthday girl, right? And I go, a little bit. It's Dustin's little sister. And he goes, so she just told me that she thinks you're very cute and was wondering if you'd be interested in potentially dating her. I was still fresh to this friend group, and I was like, that is the nuke button that if this goes south, I'm instantly kicked out, probably never seen it again, and they have some pics now. So I was like, thanks, I feel honored, but I think I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah. And so he went, told her and stuff, and then she was talking to another guy and whatever.
No
And
big
then-
deal. Water under the bridge.
Yep, figured, okay, we're all human, we live and stuff. And then I think it was like 2 years ago, or not 2 years ago, 2 years later.
I just texted. I remember. I messaged you and I said, "Hey, Snapchat this girl.
Yeah.
You know her. Thank me later."
Yeah, and I was playing, I think Player Underground just came out, or the big game that started all those, I can't remember.
Fortnite.
No, not Fortnite. It was whatever, Player Battleground or something like that. And I was in the middle of a match and I heard my phone go off and I was like, nope, I'm getting down to the last
into
10.
it.
Yeah, I'm too into it. And then the game ended and I look at my phone and I see Sam Wilburn sent you a message. And I was like, okay, Bree Cashin wants to be your friend. Who the frick is Bree Cashin? And I just see on my screen is thank me later. And I was like, what the fuck? And I accept the friend request, and then all of a sudden she says, hey, do you remember me? Nope. Who the fuck are you? And me and her started talking, and I think we talked for about a week to 2 weeks, and then it was, hey, you want to go to Applebee's and
Hang out.
yeah, go on a date? And it was, sure. And we went there. I still remember to this day what we had. She got the 3 cheese chicken panini noodle thing. I can never remember the name of it. I just remember what it looks like. And then I got a burger. On the very first date, I got a messy ass burger. I somewhat dressed nice, but I was like,
Yeah, I'm gonna wear this later.
yeah. Pretty much looking back on it, I was like, wow, Ryan, way to be classy. Like, just, and I'm sitting there and I'm eating my fries and my burger. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, what possessed her and her going, yeah, I'll give him a second date or a third date, or yeah, I can see how this is going and stuff.
And then the next thing you know, I'm officiating your wedding in a couple months.
Exactly. And it's just like, just looking back, it's like, if I would have never taken that first step in the Northern Light, A, I wouldn't be here. B, probably would have never met Bree, would never met you guys.
Everything works out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, just that one little step, and everything's changed.
So, just a couple more questions, and then we'll finish this up because I know we're kind of dragging on here, and it's a little bit more anecdotal than we usually are, but
Sorry,
as you can
a
tell,
little bit of a talker.
we spend a lot of time together and a little bit more casual this time around. Do you have a Masonic hero or a Masonic idol that you look up to?
Yes. It as everyone's probably listening can probably guess, it's my grandpa, even though he's no longer with us. I always think when I'm getting ready to plan an event or say something before a lodge or go talk to a brother, is I don't do the what would Jesus do, I do the what would my grandpa be proud of? What would my grandpa want me to do?
That's cool. I like that.
Kind of go, if I just outright call someone an asshole in front of everyone, would my grandpa go, yeah, probably not the best time, Ryan? Or would he go, yep, you did good? I mean, he was 100% Irish, so he probably would have been like, yeah, give it to all, man.
Maybe not, Grandpa. Maybe not.
Yeah.
So, as we finish up, do you have any advice you'd like to tell future Masons?
Don't be afraid to go against the tide. Don't be afraid to question the rules and edicts and the laws that have been. Obviously, don't be an asshole and don't like, well, they said I gotta wear blue. Well, I don't want to fucking wear blue. Obviously, you gotta pick and choose your battles. You can't win them all, so just pick and choose. But if you're like, you know what, I kind of want to do this, or hey, could we try this out? Don't be afraid to ask them. I would, honest to God, recommend probably talking to a brother outside of lodge, and don't spring it up on in front of everyone on a stated meeting. Inspection, definitely not an inspection. That is, ooh,
Who knows?
yeah. But just, hey, I'm kind of thinking, well, could we try this way, or could we have this event? Just talk to the worshipful master, senior deacon, junior deacon, Tyler, anyone, and just be like, hey, what are your thoughts? And see, because even though they may not hold an office or they may be somewhat new to this lodge or your lodge or whatever, they're either gonna go, I want it, I would stick away, or hey, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I think any idea we've ever come up with that we were like, there's no way they're going to let us do this. They went, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, like I remember one day when you were fuming because you just had a bad day at work and stuff, and you just needed to let off some steam, and you're on the back balcony on a cold winter day, and Gabe came up to you, and you guys kind of shot the shit, and Gabe goes, you know what you should do? And you're like, what? And you're like, and he said, you should start a podcast. And you're like, yeah, well. And it was just kind of like that. Huh.
It did take a couple days. Took a couple days to
Yeah, it wasn't that night you were buying everything. It was kind of like, let me simmer this.
Last question, brother. What would you like to leave behind for the future of Masonry?
Lord.
I know. We're getting deep on this last question.
You know, I was never a Boy Scout, but I always live by the motto of leave it better than how you found it. And that's what I want to do, and that's what I want to push forward for every Mason is, hey, we're doing great. We're making good men better. But why don't we also make Masonry a little bit better? It doesn't have to be miles. It doesn't have to be like, oh, hey, we updated this lodge, so now it's got flat screen TVs all over. We can do this. We can do this. But just that very first step, just towards change. Because you know what? The momentum's going to keep going, and eventually you are going to have flat screens ever. No, but you're going to look back and go, you know what? I'm glad I took that first step.
Baby steps eventually lead to marathons.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Brother Turco. We always appreciate everything you do for the podcast. And, you know, we could not do this without you. Your ability to sit there and tell us when we're wrong and when we are absolutely not making any sense is instrumental. And it's always nice to have your company and your advice. Yeah. And going forward, we will hopefully have you in front of the mic even more often.
Maybe. Depending on how the listeners view this. They may be like, God, this is the worst episode ever. Never have this dude on this side of it again.
We'll have to check the analytics.
Yes.
We'd like to thank you, listeners, for checking into the Third Degree Masonic podcast with Brother Turco today. We would like to request that if you have the opportunity, send us recommendations of Masons that you think we should interview, or even Masons that we should historically look up, someone you'd like to learn about.
If I could add to that a little bit, maybe not just Masons, but topics you want us to hear about is like, hey, you know what? I've heard such and such about this lodge, or I heard about this in history. Could you guys talk about this? I love your podcast.
Oh, that's a great idea. If you have any suggestion, listeners, we are all here for it. Thank you again, listeners, for listening to the Third Degree Masonic podcast.
And remember, craftsmen, keep your working tools in order and always be on the level.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, its officers, or any of its jurisdictions. They only reflect those of the hosts or guests.